Good day, ka-technologists, and to Miss Pamela Bangca. We are the Group 1 and we are going to discuss about the prehistoric art. We have Darla Mae Bilocura to discuss about the prehistoric Egyptian art, I, Lawrence Moneva, to discuss about the prehistoric Greek art, and James Ferrolino to discuss about the prehistoric Rome art. Join us. Together, let us learn more about the art history and movement of prehistoric arts of Egyptian, Greek, and Rome.
Good day everyone, I'm Darla Mae Bilocura, and may I ask you a question? Are you familiar with the paintings and designs in Egypt? Yes? Very good. So broaden your knowledge more, let's start this lesson. The early classical period in Egypt is combined into two. First is the prehistoric cave paintings, and second is the primitive designs. So first, let's start the topic in cave paintings. Cave paintings are paintings on cave walls and ceilings, and the term is used especially for those dating to prehistoric times. The background history of cave paintings is first, the purpose of Paleolithic cave painting is not yet known. Second, the evidence suggests that they were not merely decorations of living areas, since the caves in which they have been found do not have signs of ongoing habitation. Third, also they are often in areas of caves that are not easily accessed. And fourth, some theorists hold that they may have been a way of communicating with others, while other theories ascribe them as religious or ceremonial purpose. Fifth, the theme of the most common in cave paintings are large wild animals such as bison, horses, aurochs, and deer, and tracing of human hands, as well as abstract patterns called finger flattings. Many of the paintings were drawn with red and yellow, ochre, hematite, manganese oxide, and charcoal. Sometimes the silhouette of the animals was inside in the rock first. So there's the theories about the cave painting. First is the humans had not learned to write during the prehistoric time period, so they communicated through cave paintings. The second theory is they could have been that they considered this magic to help the hunters. Perhaps if the artist could capture the image of the animal, they could capture the animal in a hunt. Third, the prehistoric man could have used the painting of animals on the walls of caves to document their hunting expeditions. We will proceed to our next topic, which is the interior designs of Egypt. Ancient Egypt before was divided into two regions, and that is the Upper Egypt and the Lower Egypt. The Upper Egypt, which was dry, rocky, and culturally rusty, while the Lower Egypt, which was opulent, urban, and populous. Probably because of its relative impermanence, painting was little used as a medium of representation. It appears to have served principally as accessory to sculpture. A rare example is the painting of geese from a tomb of Medum. The early dynastic period saw the formation of cultural identity, stone artifacts, mud minor arts, pottery, vases, and bowls, and brick architecture. So there is this major contribution of Egypt to the world: irrigation system and agricultural production techniques. The first known ships used to sail on water, use wheels on land, trained donkeys to carry people, combine copper and tin to make bronze, develop hieroglyphics. Hieroglyphics is an ancient Egyptian writing, and the greatest agricultural achievements of the ancient Egypt were the pyramids, a system of mathematics, practical and effective system of medicine, Egyptian finance and glass technology, and then the new forms of literature. So during the time of Old Kingdom furniture, the platform pieces such as benches, chairs, tables, beds, couches, and stools, and boxes such as chests and cupboards. There was some surface ornamentation in the form of gliding and carving. Old Kingdom furniture relied on shape, line, proportion, and texture for its decorative effect. Thrones and chairs featured carved lion paw feet. Beds were decorated with animal skins and colorful mats. There were stools, chests, footrests, small cabinets, small tables, and even vase stand. Four-legged stools with animal-shaped legs or sturdy square seats made from concave wood or woven or braided crushes were important items of the time. Their interior designs are rich in golds, regal fabrics, elaborate artistry, elegant furnishings. Ancient Egypt's interior design typically has bold feeling with a strong, sacred, and wealthy expression. So that's all for our lesson today. Thank you for watching.
Ancient Greece was a civilization that dominated much of the Mediterranean thousands of years ago. Do you know that the Greeks came before the Roman, and much of the Roman culture was influenced by the Greeks? Yes, you heard it right. Ancient Greece formed the foundation of much Western culture today. Everything from government, philosophy, science, mathematics, art, literature, and even sports was impacted by the ancient Greeks. My name is Moneva, and I am going to discuss about the art history and movement under prehistoric ancient Greek art, including its history and characteristics. Ancient Greek art proper emerged during the 8th century BCE, and it spans a period about 930 BCE. About this time, iron was made into weapon and tools. People started using an alphabet. Complex of religions emerged, and a loose sense of cultural identity grew up. Do you know that the practice of fine art in ancient Greek evolved in 3 basic stages and periods? These are the Archaic period, Classical period, and Hellenistic period. Let's start with the Archaic period. During this period, Greek artists came into contact with ideas and styles from outside of Greece. It was also a time when vase painting and sculpture began to reflect Greek ideals. For this period, I will be discussing individually the pottery, architecture, sculpture. Let's start with the Archaic Greek pottery. The most developed art form of the pre-Archaic period was undoubtedly Greek pottery, often involving large vases and other vessels. It was decorated originally with linear designs or proto-geometric style, then more elaborate patterns or geometric style of triangles, zigzag, and other similar shapes. During the Archaic era itself, decoration became more and more figurative, as more animals, zoomorphs, and then human figures themselves were included. One of the ceramic style introduced by the city of Corinth was black figure pottery. These are figures drawn first in black silhouette, then marked with the incised details. Additional touches were added in purple and white, and it is created in different themes. As Athens dominate this style of pottery, it evolves as a new orange-red pigment, which leads to red figure pottery that flourished in 530 to 480 BCE. One of the most famous Greek Archaic era ceramic artists includes the genius Cleitias, the creator of the celebrated Francois vase.
It is a volute crater, a vessel used for mixing water and wine with curling handles, and it is likely one of the earliest and greatest treasure of Greek art. It has a large size created more space for painted decoration, which Cleitias the painter took advantage of. It was discovered and named after Alessandro Francois in 1844 and is now in the Museo Archeologico in Florence.
Archaic Greek architecture. It was during the 6th and 7th centuries that stone was used for Greek public buildings and temples. In other words, petrification. So what is petrification? It is a process which organic matter exposed to minerals over a long period of time is turned into a stony substance. Greek architecture relied on simple posts and lintel building techniques. The typical rectangular building surrounded by a line of columns on all four sides, for instance, the Parthenon, or less often at the front and rare only, for instance, the Temple of Athena. Greek architects were the first to base their architectural design on the standard of proportionality. They introduced the classical orders. So what is classical orders? These are a set of design rules based on proportions between individual parts, such as the ratio between the width and the height of a column. They introduced the three orders during the early Greek architecture. These are the Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian. Famous building of ancient Greece constructed during the Archaic period includes the Temple of Hera, Temple of Athena on the Acropolis, and temples at Paestum. Archaic Greek sculpture. Archaic Greek sculpture during this period was still heavily influenced by Egyptian sculpture as well as Syrian techniques. Greek sculptures created stone friezes and reliefs, as well as statues and miniature works. The early style of freestanding Daedalic sculpture, exemplified by the works of Daedalus, Depoinus, and Scylus, was dominated by two human stereotypes. The first one is the standing nude youth or chorus, and the second one is the standing draped girl or chori.
Later, more advanced, other famous work includes the Strongfold Apollo, the Dipylon Chorus, and the Anavisos Chorus.
Next, we have the classical period, often referred to as the Golden Age of Greece. The classical era was a time when perfection was achieved in the arts. The Parthenon was constructed during this fruitful period. It was the victory of the Persians that established Athens as the strongest of the Greek city-states. The main contribution of Greek classicism in fine art was undoubtedly its sculpture, in particular, the canon of proportions with its realization of the ideal human body. It is a concept which resonated so strongly with high Renaissance art. For this period, I will be discussing individually the sculpture, architecture, and painting. Let's start with the classical Greek sculpture. In history of sculpture, no period was more productive than the 150 years between 480 and 330 BCE. During the era as a whole, there was improvement in the technical ability of Greek sculpture to depict human body in a naturalistic posture, and statues started to look much more true to life. The sculptures during the period worked mainly in marble, bronze, occasionally wood, bone, and ivory. The Parthenon was a typical example of how the Greeks used sculpture to decorate and enhance their religious buildings.
One of the classical Greek marble sculptures is the Elgin marbles or Parthenon marbles. It is made by the architect and sculptor Phidias and his assistants during 447 to 438 BCE, which is now on the British Museum, London.
Despite being badly damaged, the Parthenon sculptures reveal the supreme artistic ability of their creators. Classical Greek architecture. Like most Greek visual art, building design reached its highest point in the development during classical period. As the two main styles of Greek architecture, the Doric and Ionic, came to define a timeless, harmonious, universal standard of architectural beauty. The Doric style was more formal and austere, while the Ionic was more relaxed and decorative. The first temples erected during the Archaic period was destroyed by the Persians. When the city-state entered its golden age, the Parthenon was built, and it remains the supreme example of classical Greek religious art designed according to Doric proportions.
Parthenon is the biggest temple on the Acropolis Hill. It was designed by Ictinus and Callicrates and dedicated to the goddess of Athena. It was entitled Athena the Virgin, or Athena Parthenos, whose skin was sculpted by Pydias from ivory and whose cloths were created from gold fabric.
Classical Greek painting. Classical Greek painting reveals a grasp of linear perspective and naturalist representation. Apart from vase painting, all types of painting flourished during the classical period. According to authors like Pliny or Pausanias, the highest form was panel painting. Subjects included figurative scenes, portraits, and still lifes and exhibitions. Due to perishable nature of these panels, not a single Greek classical panel painting has survived. Fresco painting was a common method of mural decoration in temples. The painting of stone, terracotta, and wood sculpture was another specialist technique mastered by Greek artists. The most celebrated extant example of Greek wall painting is the famous Tomb of the Diver at Paestum, one of many such grave decorations in the Greek colonies in Italy, which was found by Mario Napoli in June of 1968. One of the most famous classical Greek painter is the talented and influential Apelles of Kos, the official painter of Philip II of Macedonia and his son Alexander the Great, adding new techniques of highlighting, shading, and coloring. Lastly, we have the Hellenistic period. The Hellenistic period lasted from the death of Alexander the Great until 31 BCE, when Rome defeated Egypt at the Battle Actium. This period is marked by massive Greek cultural influence, but weakening Greek power. In the Hellenistic period, new ideas permitted Greek art, and emotion, drama, and realism began to influence the appearance of Hellenistic sculpture. For this period, I will be discussing individually the architecture, the sculpture, and the painting. Let's start with the Hellenistic architecture. The division of the Greek Empire into separate entities created a huge new opportunities for self-aggrandizement. Palatial architecture was revitalized and numerous municipal structures were built to boost the influence of local rulers. Temple architecture experienced a major slump during this period. All this changed during 2nd century when temple building experienced something revival, due partly to the increased prosperity, partly to improvements made by the architects, and cultural war waged for increased influence. In the process, temple architecture was revived and an extensive number of Greek temples as well as small-scale structure and shrines were erected.
Admired by the Roman architect Vitruvius, famous examples of Hellenistic architecture includes the Great Theater at Ephesus, the Stoa of Attalius, and the Clock House Tower of the Winds at Athens.
Hellenistic sculpture. Hellenistic Greek sculpture continued the classical trend towards the greater naturalism. Animals as well, ordinary people of all ages, became acceptable subjects for sculpture. Sculptures give way to greater emotionalism, an intense realism, and an almost baroque-like dramatization of subject matter became also as ideals of beauty. As a result of the spread of Greek culture or Hellenization, there was also much greater demand for statues and reliefs of Greek gods and heroic figures.
Famous Greek sculptures of the period includes the Farnese Bull by Epigonus,
The Three Graces by Andrews of Antioch, Laocoon and His Sons by Hagisander, Athidoros, and Polydorus, and more sculptures. Hellenistic painting. The increased demand for Greek-style sculpture was mirrored by a similar increase in the popularity of Hellenistic Greek painting. Perhaps the greatest contribution of Hellenist painters was in the portrait art, notably the Fayum mummy portraits dating from the 1st century BCE onwards. Found mostly around the Fayum or Fayum basin in Egypt, these realistic portraits were attached to the funeral cloth itself so as to cover the faces of the mummified bodies. Artistically speaking, the images belong to the Greek style of portraiture rather than any Egyptian tradition.
Greek tragedy. The real tragedy of Greek art is the fact that so much of it has disappeared. Only a very small number of temples, like the Parthenon, have survived. Greece built 5 wonders of the world, yet only ruined fragments have survived. Similarly, the vast majority of all sculpture has been destroyed. Greek bronzes and other works of Greek metalwork were mostly melted down and converted to tools or weapons, while stone statues were pillaged or broken down for use as building material. Roughly, 99% of all Greek paintings have also disappeared.
But even though this part of our heritage has disappeared, the traditions that gave birth to it live on. Greek artworks may have disappeared, but Greek art is still very much alive in the traditions of our academies and the works of our greatest artists.
Good day, my name is James Amita Ferrolino. I live in Suba, Cebu. My topic is about the prehistoric of Rome. The history of Roman Empire can be divided into 3 distinct periods. The period Kings 625-510 BC, Republic Rome 519 and 31 BC, and Imperial Rome is 31 BC and AD 476. Founding 625 BC. Rome was founded around 625 BC in the area of ancient Italy known as Historia and Latium. It is thought that the city-state of Rome was initially formed by Latium villagers joining together with settlers from the surrounding hills in response in Etruscan invasion. It is unclear whether they came together in defense or as a result of being brought under historical rule. Archaeological evidence indicates that a great deal of change and unification took place around 600 BC, which likely led the establishment of Rome as a true city. Period of Kings 625-510 BC. The first period in Roman history is known as the period of Kings, and it lasts from Rome's founding until 510 BC. During this brief, Rome's founding until 510 BC, led by no fewer than 6 kings, advanced both militarily and economically, with increases in physical boundaries, military might, and production of trade of goods, including oil lamps. Politically, this period saw the early formation of the Roman constitution. The end of the period Kings came with a decline of Etruscan power, thus ushering in Rome's Republican period. Republican Rome 510-31 BC. Rome entered its Republican period in 510 BC, though no longer ruled by kings. The Romans established a new form of government whereby the upper classes ruled, namely the senators and the equestrians or knights. However, a director could be nominated in times of crisis. In 451 BC, the Romans established the 12 Tables, a standardized code of laws meant for public, private, and political matters. Rome continued to expand through the Republican period and gained control over the entire Italian peninsula by 338 BC. It was the Punic Wars from 264 to 146 BC, along with some control of Carthage and Corinth, and thus became the dominant maritime power in the Mediterranean. Soon after, Rome's political atmosphere pushed the Republic into a period of chaos and civil war. This led to the election of the dictator Il Cornelius Sulla, who served from 82 to 80 BC. Following Sulla's resignation in 79 BC, the Republic returned to a state of unrest, while Rome continued to be governed as a republic for another 50 years. The shape of Imperium began to materialize in 60 BC when Julius Caesar rose to power. By 51 BC, Julius Caesar conquered Celtic Gaul, and also for the first time, Rome's borders had spread beyond Mediterranean region. Although the Senate was still Rome's governing, was assassinated in 44 BC and replaced by his heir, Gaius Julius Caesar Octavianus, or in the name of Octavian, who ruled alongside Mark Antony in 31 BC. Rome overtook Egypt, which resulted in the death of Mark Antony and left Octavian as the unchallenged ruler of Rome. Octavian assumed the title of Augustus and thus became the first emperor of Rome. Imperial Rome, 31 BC AD 476. Rome's imperial period was its last beginning with the rise of Rome's first emperor in 31 BC and lasting until the fall of Rome in AD 476. During this period, Rome saw several decades of peace, prosperity, and expansion. By AD 117, the Roman Empire reached its maximum extent, spanning 3 continents including Asia Minor, Northern America, and most of all, the Europe. In AD 286, the Roman Empire was split into Eastern and Western empires, each ruled by its own emperor. The Western Empire suffered several Gothic invasions and in AD 455 was sacked by Vandals. Rome continued to decline after that AD 476 when the Western Roman Empire came to an end. The Eastern Roman Empire, more commonly known as the Byzantine Empire, survived until the 15th century AD. It fell when Turks took control of its capital city, Constantinople, or as we call as the modern day Istanbul in Turkey in AD 1453. And that's all. Thank you.